Hello everyone, hope you're having a great Tuesday so far. We have been going through the Bible together one chapter at a time, and today we are on chapter 5. So if you've not already had an opportunity to read through that chapter, you'll want to do so. And we're going to talk a little bit about some highlights from that chapter, and I will post some questions that you can use in the comments below. All right, so chapter 5 at first glance looks like one of those chapters that just has a bunch of names. And honestly, chapters like that can be super easy to just skim through or to even skip. I've been there and I've done that. But I want you to realize that it's important. Those chapters are actually in the Bible for a reason. And so far, you know that we've read about God and creation. We read about Adam and Eve being created, how Satan tempted Eve in the Garden of Eden, how they had children, and Cain and Abel were both born and ended up making offerings to God. Cain's offering was not acceptable, and Abel's was, and Cain ended up actually killing Abel. And then we saw where Seth was born after Abel had been killed. So today, this particular lineage that we see here in chapter 5 deals with the descendants from Adam and Eve, specifically under the line of Seth. And the reason these things, are included in the Bible is because these are clues. We are constantly looking, or people were constantly looking to find the one who would return to redeem us from our sins, which of course was Jesus. And so promises were made from God as far as where that descendant would come from. So that's why these different names are listed, and people follow kind of the trail from those names to Jesus Christ. Now, what's interesting is if you look at a lot of these names, many of these people lived for a long, long time. As a matter of fact, you probably recognize one of the names, Methuselah. You've probably heard the phrase, so-and-so is old as Methuselah. And Methuselah actually is the oldest recorded living person in history. Now, the next chapter we're going to be reading is going to be talking about the flood. And you're going to notice that after the flood, when Noah and his family began to repopulate the earth, people did not tend to live as long as they did prior to the flood. Now, I mentioned Methuselah. It says in verse 27, Methuselah lived 969 years, and then he died. I don't know about y'all, but I don't really want to live for 969 years. I don't know if I want to live to be 96. But back then, people lived for a long, long time. Now, another person that I want to point out that I think is interesting is in verse 23, it says, Enoch lived 365 years, walking in close fellowship with God. Then one day, he disappeared because God took him. What's interesting is Enoch is one of, I think, 3 people mentioned in the Bible that do not actually have to die. Enoch didn't die a natural death. Instead, it tells us here that Jesus just took him. So he was with Jesus one day and then just ended up in heaven. How wonderful would that be? I know I had a friend once, and I volunteered with him at our local food bank. And he was an older gentleman. He's actually passed away now. But he said once that he wasn't afraid to die. He just didn't want it to hurt, which I think a lot of us feel that way. And Enoch didn't have to experience that. He is one of, I think, 3 people in the Bible who Jesus just immediately took to heaven. All right, there are a few interesting points about Genesis chapter 5 today. We will pick back up with Genesis chapter 6 tomorrow, and I will post some questions for today in the comments. Hope you're having a wonderful day. I'll see you tomorrow.